is from Buffalo.
We're live, so
So that would be me.
Just, okay, right.
I know. I was given them by the mayor. He gave me this huge package after Mom died.
Oh.
You know, what can I tell you?
Okay, so we're on, welcome back, everybody. We're on page 31, on 8703. Representative Kimball, section 17.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. This next section has no money attached to it. This is restating some things that were in H-171 last year around early childhood education. And the reason why we included it in here is because it is so important to have reaffirmation that childcare is important, or that the education workforce for childcare is important. So we did include this wording in here, but did not do any appropriations in the bill. So that is section 17 and 18.
And does it do something other than just call out the importance of this workforce group?
It does not.
no money in 17 or 18.
Right.
But there is. But there are two words that say legislative intent, so there must be some no?
Not in this
What
particular.
it says is the intent of the legislature.
Yeah, to do all these, okay.
I'm sure you're not going to get sued for this sentence.
I have not been advised to that degree.
So, and Charlie, would you be kind enough to, there's a lot of money for childhood education elsewhere. Where is that? So can you tell us where there is money for this? Because I think right now there's a ton in appropriations.
Not from our appropriations. So it was is in the fiscal year 2022. So it's still in play,
Yeah,
but it's not new money.
it's old money
Last year or this year.
for over X periods, number of
Right.
years. Right, okay.
Right.
So there is money for this year, it just was appropriated last year.
Right, and that was supposed for scholarships and loan repayment for
Right,
those
right.
that are in early childhood education.
Thank you, that was clarifying, because I know there's money, there's money, it's just,
Is early childhood education essentially preschool and kindergarten? Is that essentially like 3 to 5 or something?
zero to kindergarten.
Yeah.
So even a daycare where there's
Yeah, it's
no-
early education, absolutely. The
So-
moment they're born is early education.
So Building Bright Futures focuses on those children that are 0 to 8 years old.
Yeah.
And so it really mirrors that. We did talk extensively with Building Bright Futures, and they have a study that's coming out in July that is looking at their whole systems analysis of the child care delivery system, from which there may be additional recommendations for the legislature next session. So that's, we talked to the folks at Let's Grow Kids about a couple of provisions they wanted to see in the bill. And, you know, they are really striving to make sure that in the future, the state does support child care expenses so that nobody spends more than 10% of their
Right.
monthly income on child care. They were looking to work with, I believe, the Association of Early Education, Youth Education, AC, I believe is how you pronounce the acronym. And they exist in the state as a professional organization for childhood educators. They've got about 550 members. And part of the issue that I think they're running into is that not everyone considering an education, early childhood education, or a career in early childhood education knows about the loan incentives that we put out last year. So they're trying to create a marketing program to then educate people about those different programs that are available, including the money they allocated last year. You will not see that in this bill. That was a $125,000 request for a marketing program and support. You will probably hear from advocates asking you for that money. We have something similar in this bill for Agency of Human Services to hire somebody about all the next sections we're about to cover, but we did not include that for early childhood education.
Could it not also be married in a way to the piece about keeping people after college, that program, the stuff we talked about right at the beginning of this bill?
It could. We didn't specify what careers we wanted people to be in or anything in that
Right.
first part of the bill. We're silent on the jobs that they would take if there was in a critical occupation. We've run afoul of being too specific with that with the
So
organizations.
the intent here, even though there's no money, is to make a positive statement on the need for supporting the child care or childhood education system.
Yes,
But it's not necessarily talking about supporting the parents who are having difficulty paying for it.
Right.
Because we're dealing with finance with a $48 million child care tax credit bill.
yes,
And I think they've got to be interrelated to the extent you can prop up families to pay their bills for childcare. More kids are going to go to childcare and provide revenue to the childcare centers, as well as allow parents to go to work.
it's all interrelated. And
It
in
is.
this bill, it was really just trying to focus on the workforce for that particular segment. Yeah.
Which we have paid for in previous appropriations.
Yeah. Section 19 is an introduction into, I think, 13 following sections, all about the healthcare workforce. We worked closely with our healthcare committee. Members of our committee worked with members of their committee to really form the next few sections of this bill. And that's to focus on both incentives to be in the workforce and also retention to keep people who are in the workforce. So you see in section 20, that's the intent. In section 20, we're talking about $3 million, which we're looking to over $1 million over the next 3 years. $1 million each year. For emergency interim grants to Vermont's nursing schools to increase compensation for each full-time equivalent member of the clinical and didactic nurse faculty and staff. It'd be an estimated 30% increase in salaries.
It's been a big issue.
So the biggest issue here is that to be a nurse faculty member, you take a pay cut, a fairly substantial pay cut from being a nurse to being a nurse educator.
Right.
So the idea is to retain those nurse faculty members by increasing their pay, as long as you can work it out with the unions for which they work. So that's part of this bill.
Right, and I recall Laura's testimony in the last couple of years about how we are understaffed with these faculty members, that we did something a couple of years ago with GovOps to.
How many nursing schools do you have in the state? Who are they?
VTC.
I want to say there's 7 different nursing schools, because Norwich University is their nursing school, they have VTC, UVM.
7 nursing programs.
Yeah, 7 nursing programs, and I'm trying to think of the other ones.
VCC, I think also has opportunities, but yeah, I recall that there's 7, roughly 7.
So if there were like someone over, maybe the appropriations committee is the place where this does, if someone's overseeing the whole budget and looking at the needs of UVM, you a trustee, by the way?
I'm not.
You know, they're getting $10 million to help support them, but they're also getting money here too. I mean, one,
Faculty are getting money here.
yeah, but I mean, they basically need to deal with the marketplace, and we didn't give them money. Well, I assume that they would use perhaps some of that $10 million to find other sources to keep their program going. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this, but in terms of looking at the whole picture of what they're giving to some of these institutions, we should. I mean, it's not, you know, I don't know that it comes into play in this bill, but somebody should have a handle on all the sources of new money that's going to various institutions.
That would be Stephanie.
It's really interesting because I've thought about the same lines you're talking about because like the Farm and Forest Viability Program is administered, I think, by the UVM Extension Service. So it's like, okay, there's a contract from BHCV to run that program to UVM. So I think there are pockets everywhere that are feeding into different places. So it's I think almost impossible to figure it out. But
It would be wonderful if we had a huge visual on how it all went and how it was all connected.
Okay, so this is for the teaching staff.
yes.
Yeah. And this has been a long time problem, so this is great that you're addressing this here because it's a big piece of it.
So we looked at, I think there was 900 applicants for the nursing program at UVM to enter it this past fall. They only had 100 slots. So it's like, well, what is the problem? Part of it is this throughput of the nursing faculty. You don't have it. The next part is about preceptors. Those people are on the clinical floor that are working with students to kind of go through rounds and get them educated. So we're really talking about the point of constraint for people entering the nursing field is from the education through in order to get to it. It's not that we have a shortage of people interested in entering nursing, it's that we have this point of constraint for people that are interested but can't actually go through it.
So the preceptor, this is clinical, people work on the clinical floor, they're not the same as the instructors in the same.
That's right. So they're different. So a nursing faculty member might be in a classroom. It could be in a different setting. So the preceptor is bringing around that person to learn the actual skills on the floor. It's going to be different.
So the preceptors working for the hospital or for the school?
There's another question because there's a third role, which is at a hospital where someone is working on behalf of the hospital is kind of that human resource level with a person coming in. So Rutland Regional Medical Center, we talked about that, is they have preceptors, there's nursing faculty from a college trying to provide this training. There's also somebody on the floor that is needed to help them interface with the rest of the organization. So it's an HR role, so they're not training them, but they're providing that interface between their job and the rest of the organization. So it's like these three different sections. We're not focused on the HR section. We're focused on the preceptors when they're in the clinical setting, and then also the nurse faculties at the nursing schools. So it's a combination of those two. And we get further down in the bill, there's a third place which is more on the HR, but also with the education role. It's a very creative program.
So I would assume that clinical training for these nursing students is provided under contract with the hospital. So there's nurses on the floor and they go in, they do a rotation with those nurses, and part of those nurses' responsibility is training these students.
It may be, I'm not sure if the contract is with the hospital or with the school. I don't know. Yeah. But what we found is that there's fewer people that want to take on the role as preceptors. It's additional work. You know, to have somebody tagging along, you have to explain what you're doing. So it's,
But it's critical.
it's critical, right?
It's critical,
We need to know.
right.
So we need to,
But so how do doctors, I mean, doctors have students following them around all the time. How do they make it work and nurses don't?
well, I think nurses get paid a lot less, so there's
Well,
less.
that's true. There's less incentive.
And I'm not sure. But the testimony that we took is that there's not enough financial incentive for the preceptors to people agree to be preceptors. So it's not a requirement. So in a teaching hospital, it's going to be different. But if it's non-teaching hospital, you're not going to have that doctor playing that role.
So the only teaching hospital we have is UVM.
I would think so.
Is Central Vermont a teaching hospital?
I doubt it.
That I don't know.
I think you gotta be way up there to be a teaching hospital. It's usually tertiary care. And it maybe has to be associated with a medical school. We could find out, because this money is targeted eventually at the people on the floor who are providing teaching, learning experiences to the nursing and
Right, that's the preceptors. Yeah.
Right.
just trying to understand whether
Thinking through their hands-on.
it's certainly helping the people who want to get the training, but I'm wondering if it's also helping the budgets of the hospitals or schools, because to the extent they need to survive, that's not big for this.
Yeah, and this is intended to be an extra kicker, and it's at $5 an hour, so it's, you know, 200 a week.
Oh, it's down to that level. I see that on page 35.
Yeah,
So that's how you put some guardrails on the
Yeah.
244 bill.
Yeah.
Do you know what, on average, they're paid?
I don't. I would be making it up.
Okay. Yeah, until we do something to change some of this, we're just driving people into traveling nursing situations because they're being paid just gross amounts of
Yeah,
money. I
yeah.
mean, more than many doctors. I mean, just
They're-
like 400 an hour or something. The VPR did a piece on it the other day that was just shocking how much they're paid an hour.
You know, we're taking a lot of testimony because you pay the agency to pay the traveling nurse, and you're paying, you're not paying directly to the traveling nurse.
Right.
And so your costs sometimes are 3 times what you pay a nurse.
Yeah, it's just
That's the solution. I think got the solution for that.
Well, we think it's part of this, creating a better pipeline to bring more nurses online faster.
Is there any projection though as to whether or not this is really gonna work when the event incentives appear to be so perverse?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, I think 2 years ago, there was a estimate that we needed 8,000 nurses, right?
Yeah.
And so that hasn't changed, it's only increased. And the traveling nurse program is very attractive to someone who does not have significant roots or a mortgage necessarily, and they can go and they want to explore someplace. So for those individuals, it's great. It's a great program. But if we want to have folks that are tied to the community and really want to make their life here, I mean, how do you tie that person in?
Well, I mean, that's what I sort of look at is we're doing all this stuff, but you know,
Yeah.
do we have any measurement of what we're doing now as to whether or not it's working? In other words, how many people are we getting and how many people are we likely to get based on what we're doing and what others are doing similar things? Are we basically throwing money at a problem in a way that isn't working? We're continuing to pay the high rate of the traveling nurses, and would it make more sense to simply pay nurses here more, right, to begin with, and do it right now,
Right.
to fix the problem?
And we did have that discussion about, can you just increase the wages for nurses? And they're under a bargaining agreement.
Yeah.
Like, okay, can we affect that? So we've had that same discussion. You're absolutely right.
And this is the conversation Vermont Care Board's having this right now, because the traveling nurses are putting such pressure on the hospital budgets. So it's unsustainable too much, and yet we need to accomplish 2 things: more nurses and better pay for the people who are actually living in a state.
Another thing that's not in this bill that was in the original short form was, how do you make employers those employers of choice? To make it so that they are better employers and more attractive to people to stay with. And we talked specifically about hospitals too. But we thought it was a little too big brother-ish to try to go in and say, you're not performing well, so we want you to become a better employer. You have to do this, this, and this. So in the end, that did not become part of the bill, but that was part of the discussion. How do you make it so that somebody wants to stay here? Is it the conditions of work too, which is
Right.
definitely
It's
important.
absolutely a huge
Yeah.
piece of why people are or aren't leaving.
Yeah.
Is how good is the employer.
Okay, so we're on page 37 now.
I can go fast.
Love it if we could get through the nursing section, which is another.
And-
We'll do that wherever we are. We'll stop.
Okay, and with this section, Representative Donahue was the main person from our healthcare committee that provided us with input on this, so she might be good to hear from
On section 21.
on all the healthcare sections.
Oh,
We're just gonna do the nursing.
Yep, so on section 22 is $3 million, again, for nursing pipeline and apprenticeship program. This is actually kind of fascinating. This is looking at employers who are currently trying to upskill existing employees at different medical facilities. The example that's close by is Central Vermont Hospital. So they're taking, or making opportunities available for those that are working in some other capacity. It could be in the cafeteria, they could be orderlies, in order to get some kind of medical skills training. Like their focus is, let's get the people that we already have, let's upskill them, and then to a higher degree of nursing. And so they are running this program. They're providing scholarships, wraparound services, a lot of different things. We said, let's expand this. Rutland Regional is doing something similar. Southern Vermont Hospital is doing something similar, not quite to the extent. So they would be really good to hear from. So very creative solutions here.
Well, and it's looking at the people who are already here, invested here, have children in our schools.
Yep.
And doing the thing everybody wants to do, learn more and grow in their work. I mean, that's uniformly, that's part of being a good employer, is enabling people those opportunities.
Absolutely.
So just getting back to preceptors, is that something that some of these experimental programs are doing, offering preceptor services to get, I guess, nursing, depending on the level of nursing, you need some sort of license.
Yes.
Education.
Right. Your LA, your RN, BA.
You said they're giving scholarships. What else? You mentioned another thing,
Some wraparound services. So,
wraparound services.
yeah. And do they need to provide, so that's all in the details of this particular section of the bill. What kind of services do you need to provide in order for that person to take those classes in order to be qualified?
BSAC is going to give us money out.
Yes.
A grant to,
The grant to healthcare employers.
any parameters on the grants at this point, other than that?
No, there's no specific parameters on the grants in terms of dollar amounts or, I don't think we put on a provision in here.
I mean, there's goals, obviously, of all the things you have to achieve. before
Yeah.
that,
Right.
Prioritization. Which sort of stuff.
Yep. Okay, section 17.
No.
No.
23,
23.
page 38.
All right.
Forgivable loan, another forgivable loan incentive program.
Yes. So there's a number of these. So this is for pipelines under 22, section 23, 38. Okay. I have two different documents I'm working from. Vermont Nursing Forgivable Loan Incentive Program. All right. So this currently exists in statute, but we are actually only exist in session law. We're adding it now to statute. You'll see in section 23. The Vermont Nursing Forgivable Loan Incentive Program. What has been in session law was the Vermont Scholarship Program. It's a mistitle because these are forgivable loans. So I believe this is a hang on. It was originally a $3 million request. It's $100,000. The reason why is that we had appropriated money in the previous 2 fiscal years to this program, and they still have money left.
So somebody's holding it somewhere.
Yes.
Who's holding it?
VSAC. VSAC, and they are,
So how much-
AHEC or VSAC, just a minute.
It says VSAC, Vermont Student Assistance.
Yes, it's
Distributors.
VSAC, yes. So they, we were going along with the $3 million, and we got to the appropriations committee and said, you know what, there's still money left in the budget, or still left in the kitty, so we don't need the full $3 million you're talking about. There's $1.8 million actually left. They're going to be dispersing, I think, maybe $1 million over the next year. So we said, okay, let's reduce this down to $100,000.
And this was money that was appropriated last year.
Yes.
And why is it going so slowly? Is it just a lack of demand for students? Or-
I think it's coming back to that, there's no way the throughput.
Is it not, people don't know about it?
I don't know the answer to that.
Do you know how much is left?
1.8.
I believe it was $1.8 million.
That the same question as on rock. I mean, this is such a big area. Why isn't this enough done?
Right, and I think it's for throughput, but I'm not sure, and VSAC can answer that question better.
Sure, I don't understand what throughput means in this context.
I'm sorry, in terms of the number of students that could actually work through the program because of the lack of the preceptors and nursing educator, nurse faculty.
Oh, the constraints that we
Yeah.
address.
Got it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that's what I meant by throughput
Okay.
for the students. Yeah.
It's like supply chains.
Well, but
Yeah,
it's the barriers.
Mixing metaphors, yeah, that's right.
Scrambled on the supply chain.
Yeah. I would say that is exactly it.
Okay.
So that's the $100,000. We're up to section 26, I believe, which is just incredible.
The section or that we're
They
there.
were there. No, this is the Vermont Nursing and Physician Assistant Loan Repayment Program. So this is again part of that whole, we have the forgivable loans and we have their loan repayment program as an incentive for them to get into this program. We included physician's assistants in this because they are similarly challenged in terms of a workforce development. So this is a retention and recruitment method tool.
I'm just wondering if is there any data about how many Vermont nurses have become travelers?
Informal probably, but I bet OPR would have a notion.
I mean,
I think there is anecdotal. I'm not sure if it's,
There's a big incentive to do it, sadly.
Charlie, forgive my
yes.
not getting this concept. What's the difference between forgiveness and repayment?
Repayment is for existing debt. And yep, a forgivable loan is for that. Yep.
So this is loan repayment, that is forgivable loan.
So this, the existing debt that's gonna be repaid under this section, how much did this section get? $1 million?
$2 million.
$2 million?
And yeah, the appropriations in section 27.
So what do we get for this?
What do we get?
What do we get for this money?
Hopefully,
They
yeah.
have to stay for some more
We
years.
get retention, yeah. So they get a loan repaid for every year that they work in that position.
And I guess the general question I have, are we losing a lot of nurses to other states or to the traveling nurse profession? I don't want to say a problem, I would say a question, about giving money to people who may be happy in their profession and, be willing to have the means to pay off their debt, and it's all about targeting for me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a reasonable question. I don't know the answer to it. Yeah.
I think we could start with OPR trying to find out. But anecdotally, I've heard quite a few of our nurses, one exacerbating the problem is that numbers of our younger nurses are traveling.
Okay.
Yeah. The next section is similar in its structure. Section 28 is for nurse faculty forgivable loan and loan repayment program. So we already talked about an emergency incentive to keep nurse faculty on the job to increase their pay. This is to help them repay their loans.
Did you work closely with a trade group or a lobbying group in the State House that represent nurses, and were they actively involved in this bill?
Laura, Andy McLaren, Andy's group. They do the nurses, Laura,
Oh, yeah, from MMR.
MMR is,
Laura Pelosi.
we got Laura
I don't think
Pelosi.
she represents the nurses.
Yeah, she's worked with us in GovOps a lot.
She works for the nursing homes.
Well, I believe she also does.
I guess it's-
Yeah, and the healthcare committee was working with them more directly.
So the healthcare committee is primarily responsible for all these.
Yep.
Healthcare.
Yep. So I'm sorry, it's not just a loan repayment, but a forgivable loan and loan repayment. Because there's both of those and it has eligibility sections underneath as to do they qualify. And this is because in order to become a nurse faculty member, then they might have to go back to school and get their master's degree.
Oh, right.
So it's to help them pay for those education costs and also pay for the loan repayment. So it's an incentive program.
So you'll probably have the same questions for us on our bill, up to $500,000. Where do these numbers come from? Start out with 5 million, and you gotta get it down, or is it priorities in the committee?
That is a good question, and these have been recommended to us. And also the member of appropriations most familiar with this is Peter Fagan, Representative Fagan,
Correct.
who's been very involved in this section of the budget, and also his involvement in the Rutland area and medical center.
So I'm interested in this, we're almost at the end, I'm interested in on page 46, service commitment. I haven't read it, but it seems to stand out as being, I didn't see it in other sections. Is this more than just working for another year to get a certain amount off your loan? It says something about good cause. This
For
I'm on
cost.
page 46.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. That's more spelled out than it is in the other sections, and I'm trying to think of why we put that in there. Full academic year Forgivable loan if an individual fails to serve as an active nurse faculty member at a nursing school in the state. Okay, other than for good cause. Okay,
We'll just take a look at that.
that's,
They're all.
I think that means that you went and got the training, but now you're not servicing in that capacity as a nurse faculty member. We're not going to repay your loans unless you did so because you had good cause in order not to become that faculty member. Maybe you had a health issue or maybe you had something else. So,
All right, that's a good stopping point.
okay.
Oh, are we at the end of?
Lower, at the end of nurses. is
But they all
yeah.
in some way have a service commitment. It's just sadly
They
not
do.
spelled out.
But that one was if you cannot continue to work as a nurse faculty member, if there's some justifiable reason.
Okay, we are at section 30.
The other stuff is really simple.
Somehow I know. But we'll have you back.
Okay.
What do we have for Friday?
We have the other.
A field trip.
The other witnesses that were on the bill.
No, we have Representative Jerome.
Oh, for the
right,
arts
yeah,
bill for
the
the creative sector bill.
So we'll have you back next week.
Okay, all right, sounds good. Great.
You got, I just want to say, thank you. This is a huge bill and you did, I just want to say thank you because it's.
Yeah.
You guys, we did economic development, you did workforce and boy, you did it up proper. So it's,
We know that
you've given us a lot to work with.
it'll continue to morph. You're asking good questions and stuff that we'll happy to talk to you about it later.
Yep.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
thank
you.
you.